sorry.
We are live on YouTube.
Hi.
Hello, welcome to Screen Source. This is a very special episode for us. We're going to be reviewing the movie Mother by Darren Aronofsky, and it is a spoiler review. So keep that in mind as you're watching this. That we're going to pick this apart.
Yeah.
You know. I guess maybe a way to start this off is initial thoughts on the film.
It's a crazy movie.
Psycho.
Could I get a quick plot synopsis?
Okay, yeah. So it's about this couple living in this house kind of in the middle of nowhere. Jennifer Lawrence is like a young housewife. She's like rebuilt this house from the ground up because it burnt down. And Javier Bardem is her older husband, who is a writer, a poet of some acclaim, but he hasn't created anything in some time. So she's just trying to make this house perfect for him. And he's a kind of a little aloof.
Okay.
Maybe I'm getting too in detail right now. Anyway, one night this guy comes to the door, just this random man, and Javier Bardem, he invites him in to stay with them, and she's kind of like, what are you doing? Like, why wouldn't you, like, ask me first? Like, this is weird. But he's like, oh, he just needs somewhere to stay. We're just going to let him stay. And then the next day his wife shows up. And then she's staying there, too. And then it just kind of
Gets weirder?
escalates from there with, like more and more people, like, come to this house to see him. And they're all there to see him. And, like, she's just, like, kind of bewildered by, like, why are we letting all these people in their house? They're destroying the house. They're, like she made the kitchen sink, but it's not braced yet, and people keep sitting on it. And she's like, can you not sit there, please? It's not braced. And then it just, it builds from there. I can't even really
Okay.
describe. Maybe you want to add anything to that synopsis?
I do want to preface this also by saying that us three have seen this, and you were the only one at the table that has
have not.
Yes. And so, as we mentioned before this, maybe you'll stand it as a little bit as an audience surrogate and somebody that's seen Aronofsky films. And maybe you can be the voice of dissent on some level from that, because I'd say, at least generally overall, we enjoyed it.
Well,
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what you were
I'm
saying
going to say
yesterday.
some negative things. I will say some negative things. I will
Sure.
say a lot of negative things. So
Great.
It's an incredibly tense movie. Like, it's not a fun movie to watch.
Nope.
Cool.
It gets pretty disturbing at points, which you come to expect from Aronofsky.
Yeah.
Of course, it's going to get really weird and fucked up. I had a very different interpretation of what its themes were and kind of what it was saying than Dylan, for example. There's a lot of religious and biblical imagery and references in this movie.
Okay. Do you need to know your Bible to, like, get
I
it?
feel like the more you know about it, the more you're going to get out of this movie.
Sorry, I just did a little
Yeah.
star thing.
So during it, I was kind of like freaking out a little bit. I was like, oh, I get that. They're referencing this thing and they're referencing that, because I'm not religious, but I was raised very religious. So I have a lot of that knowledge.
You don't need a deep understanding of religion. If you know some of the standard
Basic
stories,
things.
like
Okay.
Cain and Abel, things like that, then
You'll
you should
pick
be
up
able
on
to pick
some
up on
of
it.
at
Okay.
least.
Yes. So let's start off, I guess, again, like maybe overall feelings for this film, and then we can go into the nitty gritty of it if we'd like. Did we enjoy it? Did we not enjoy it? Or we could say that to the end.
I think it's crazy. I think it's an important movie for, because it's so out there and original. But at the same time, I was so highly anxious the whole movie, and felt that I could relate to the main character quite a bit. Some of the arguments her and Javier Bardem had were like word for word arguments that Dylan and I have had. So that made me extremely uncomfortable, and kind of was like, I don't want to face these demons by watching this movie. No.
Yeah, I've never felt, this might be the most anxious I've ever felt in a film, like at the theaters, and and I enjoy horror films and things like that. So, but it isn't a horror film proper by any means.
No, it's not your typical horror movie.
No.
It's like using the Bible and religious themes and ideas to create a horror movie out of it, because a lot of religion, when taken literally, is horrifying.
Yeah.
And they delve into that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was also apparently supposed to be a big metaphor for the environment,
there's a lot
environmentalism. So yeah,
of that.
So I want to say something about the way it's shot. At the beginning of the film, it's shot very up close, kind of like this picture here. I mean, sometimes it's even closer than that. So whoever their DP or DOP was, they were getting very quote unquote intimate. Although we talked a little bit about intimate shots being up close.
Well, it's intimate, but intimate in a way that makes you uncomfortable.
Is it intrusive?
Yes, but like because we were comparing it to another movie that uses a lot of really tight close-ups and like tracking shots, which was Les Miserables, which I and a lot of people disliked that movie because it was just a complete misunderstanding of what a close-up is for. And in this movie, it uses it right. It's supposed to make you claustrophobic. It's supposed to be uncomfortable because you're so close to this person and you can't see what's around you. And that's why you use it a lot in horror movies. In Les Miserables, the director was trying to like go for like an intimate, like emotional thing, and it completely like misfired, in my opinion, anyway. Because like you're watching a scene where you're supposed to be like feeling some emotion and some like like Anne Hathaway singing her heart out and she's dying, but all I can feel was like, this is so uncomfortable. I'm so like weirded out right now because
I need some space.
It's just misusing the camera.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the point
But
of
this
this
one
was to
used
make
it right.
it feel uncomfortable. So it's up close shots like this, but then it also switches to first person view a lot. And I thought that was kind of cool. I like that like juxtaposition. You're seeing what she's seeing a lot. There's a lot of like looking around corners, and then as somebody else pointed out last night, I don't remember who it was, one of us. But we were talking about how as the film got more grandiose and bigger themed, and as it grew, at least so from what I can remember, the shots also grew. They panned out more. Now we're having these bigger picture shots as opposed to these really close up close intimate shots. So I thought that was interesting. I feel like that was mirrored in that way.
Okay.
But it's always focused on her. It's either right on her or from her perspective.
Right.
She's in every scene, almost every shot of the movie.
Okay.
I thought it was funny that the females that were watching the movie, Elena and I, we were the ones that noticed that her hair was gray in the movie. Like her hair was dyed like a grayish. And then none of the guys noticed that. And then they all noticed that in this one scene where she's getting, spoiler alert, she's getting beaten up. I guess her nipples show, like her shirt is ripped. And the women didn't notice that at all, but all the guys noticed.
Yeah.
Like, we're like, what is this about?
Super gross, guys.
I know.
Okay. For me, I noticed because I'm just very uncomfortable about nudity in movies. And so there were a couple scenes where I like, oh gosh, she's going to get naked. And like, I kind of like got like a little tense or whatever because that's just me.
Yeah,
and I have
that's
issues.
why I did the same.
So there were a number of times I was like, oh, but she didn't. Like, so you didn't see her naked. I was like, okay. So it's like, whew, relief. I have issues, guys. Anyway,
No.
So in that scene, I remember being like, oh, now it was, it stood out because if there were so many scenes where you thought it was going to go there, but it
Actually,
didn't,
yeah.
and it did, and it was an interesting choice to have that be the scene where you finally see more of her.
So this movie kind of starts off with her being in a paranoid state, and that stays throughout the movie. And so initially, when I'm getting into the film, I'm like, okay, why is she like this? What's going on that we don't know? What are they trying to unravel? And so, what were your initial thoughts as to why she was so paranoid all the time? Is that even the right word?
I think.
So we talked about.
It's clear that there's a past that Javier Bardem's character has a past that she feels like she doesn't really know about, and she's like, there's all these clues, like people have pictures of him like in their luggage, like and she's always constantly like touching the house. She's having these episodes where she like gets super nauseous and dizzy, and she like touches the house and closes her eyes, and the house is like connected to her, and she like sees this like heart beating.
I disagree. I think she knows everything that there is to know about him. She knew what the picture was and what it's from, and she knows that he's a poet that hasn't been doing well. for the last X amount of years. What we talked about last night is potentially that there's distance between her husband and her, and that there's a sense of uncertainty as to their future and how things are going to move forward in their relationship. It still didn't fully explain why she was always paranoid about everything. Like there's like this constant ringing that keeps coming back in the film, and she keeps having episodes too throughout the film, which I think later on maybe it explains the episodes in that the house is getting sick and she's getting sick. At the same time, and we'll get to that. Yeah, like it's almost the very final scene of the movie where it really just kind of throws it in your face as to what's going on.
Is she experiencing some sort of like post-traumatic stress? Like, is he emotionally abusive or
I think
controlling?
A lot easier to answer if I just share what I think the movie is about and what it all represents.
Yeah, sure, let's do that.
Please do.
So it's a movie about religion and about the religious experience. Javier Bardem, the husband, is God. That's
Subtle.
how I read it. Yeah.
Okay.
And it gets even less subtle as it goes along. There's not, I mean, it starts off kind of like, oh, I see what you're doing there. And then by the end, it's like completely in your face, blatant, like, you know.
So she's afraid, in super unsubtle terms, she's afraid to displease her God.
I think you could maybe say that.
Okay.
I think it's more like she wants him to just be with her, to pay attention to her. But then once all these people start coming into the house and they're all there to see him, and he's just like, oh, they're here for me. I don't know, like they need me. I mean something to them. And so for me, I think it kind of represents what it's like to be religious, to have this, relationship with God, whatever that means. It's like it's supposed to be this personal thing between you and him, but also he's God, everyone.
But everybody's getting in the middle of that.
Yeah. And so I think that's why there's so much like paranoia early on. It's not really paranoia. It's more like it's just like uncertainty and doubt. Like, where's her husband? She wants her, not because she's scared of him, not because she's worried that he's going to do something. It's just like there's always this fear that he's going to leave, that she's going to lose him, or that he's going to be busy doing his God thing with other people, and she's going to get left behind. He's very busy.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But it doesn't paint, I don't think the portrait it paints of God is necessarily, he's a selfish, emotionally manipulative asshole.
Yeah. And selfish was like a kind of like underlined word that I have here, that he comes off as like kind of the epitome of selflessness.
Yeah, because he's so open. He welcomes
He's just like,
everybody
come in,
food,
share my
whatever.
house.
Then they start destroying the house. It's just like, please tell them to go.
But
They
it's
have
all
to
for
go.
show. It's all like, look at how great I am. I'm going to let these people stay here.
I don't know if it's for show so much as like that's what he needs himself.
Okay.
He needs people
he
to need
feeds
him.
off of it. Yes, he's very needy.
Because she's like,
person.
please make them leave,
Yeah,
like
they'll
20
listen to
times.
you. They love you.
And he's like, I don't want them to leave.
Yeah, at one point he says, I don't want them to leave. I want them here. And their house is torn
Destroying
apart.
everything. Yeah.
There's like a literal war going on outside their bedroom window, people being shot. And like it gets really
dark.
very surreal.
Surreal is a good word, yeah.
Like at a certain point you're just like, okay, this isn't meant to be taken literally anymore. This is just all very like allegorical.
Yeah.
So let's get into some of those allegories.
Yeah, because there's a lot to dissect.
Yeah.
So we already said he's God. That's how I read it. I don't think you can read it any other way.
Yeah.
He is God. I think I want to wait to get into who she is because I have a lot of theories about who she might represent. I think the house itself is like all of creation.
Paradise.
Yeah, I was reading one review that put it in a way that's like it's structured so like the basement is hell. And then like
with the fire,
like the higher levels, like that's the roof, like the top layer would be heaven, but we never see.
You don't really see the third floor.
Yeah,
you see the
like
second
four
floor.
floors, but we never see.
But that
he
is
goes
where
up there at one point,
where the
but you
baby's
don't
born.
follow him there.
The baby is born in
That's
the.
like the.
No, that's the
layer,
second floor.
Or third layer.
Yeah, hers. The baby was born in the office. The top floor, though, the one actually. Now that you mentioned that, like, if that is heaven, if that is paradise at the top, he's looking down at everybody, and it's one of the few shots in the film where you actually see the top of the floor, and it's from like the spiral staircase looking upwards, and he's looking down at everybody, and he's getting ready to scorn.
Yeah, and you never get to go up there.
No,
You never. Go
only
up to the
he's
top
allowed
layer.
up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think the first moment where I was like, okay, I get what this is the Cain and Abel reference, which is the man who comes to stay and his wife who joins him. Then their kids come and they're fighting over like inheritance, his will, and they get into a fight and one of them ends up killing the other one. And then Javier Bardem comes in. What do we call him? Just God or Javier?
His
JD.
name.
None of them.
His
He's just, in the credits, he's him.
Him.
She's
HIM.
mother. Ed Harris, like the man is just
Man.
then woman, then older brother, younger brother.
Super confusing.
You never get none
No
of the
names.
characters have names. So then he comes in to like break them apart, and he like throws the older brother who just killed his younger brother, and he like smashes his head into something and gets like a mark on his head. Which, if you know the story of Cain and Abel, God marked Cain after he murdered Abel because he was a marked man. That's where
It
that
was the
kinda
Harry
originates
Potter
from.
of the Bible.
Except not.
So not even close. It's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was the first time I was like, oh, that's a very, very clear allusion to Cain and Abel. And then going back, we had a question yesterday we were trying to figure out. There's a scene where the man is sick in the bathroom and he's like throwing up, and she like goes in and she's like wondering like, hey, are you okay? Is everything okay? And Javier Bardem's in there with him, and there's like a wound on the man's back, and he like covers it up and he says, give him some privacy. And we were wondering, what does that mean? Like, what was, because everything means something. Everything in this movie was so intentional, like down to the last detail. And so it wasn't until last night when I was reading like the names that each of the characters had. He was man, and then the next day his wife shows up and she's woman. And so I was like, oh,
he took
the
his rib.
It's the rib. And so
Kevin made a Facebook messaging group to tell us all, I know what it is, but I'm not telling you.
and then everyone figured it out.
I was just like, I don't know. It has to be something Adam and Eve related. I don't really know. But then, yeah, the rib makes
Once
total
you see
sense.
it, it's like, oh,
Yes.
it's the rib. And that's what we're saying. There's not a lot of subtlety in this movie.
Clearly, yeah.
And that's the most subtle
You guys
it
are
gets.
not making a case for me to go see this movie. I got to be honest
I don't
with you.
think you'd like it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that it's a Jamie film.
Yeah,
But
it's rough.
So there was also another thing in the film that was hard to wrap my head around. I still don't know that I totally understand it, but there's a hole in the ground. This is on the second floor, I believe, of this house, where eventually the baby's carriage, or his
that's
crib,
the nursery.
the
She
crib.
makes that the nursery.
It ends up being the nursery, yes, but there's a hole in the ground. And did we ever really figure out what that hole meant?
I'm
the story?
confused.
I mean,
don't
it
know what
looks. It's bloody. It's always open. It's like a gaping wound almost
It
in the
kind
house.
of, yeah, it looks vaginal
It does kind of look
in ways,
vaginal.
and then
It's
she keeps
just
putting
like
her finger into it.
Yeah, it's. I don't know what it represents.
I
but-
think this is maybe the simplest explanation. Was it maybe? I
Is the
forget who
baby
said it.
alive?
Okay, let's talk about the baby. Do we want to talk about the baby?
Yeah, well, we'll finish
Yeah.
the hole in the ground. Like
Okay.
I remember somebody said that maybe it is about their relationship in some way.
Yeah.
There's a hole in their relationship,
a
and it could
wound
be
in their
literally there's a
relationship.
hole in the ground. I'm not entirely
and
sure.
every
or a
time
foundation.
that their relationship gets worse, it like starts to bleed and get more.
Yeah, and she thinks she's
open
covered it
and-
up. She replaced the floorboard.
Uh-huh.
She put a rug over it. She thinks that that wound is covered, but it keeps coming back.
Yep.
And so I think that's just like
Yeah, I like the idea of it was being covered. She's covering. She's
putting a
pretending it's
carpet
not
over it
happening.
and-
That
yeah.
this relationship isn't. There isn't a rift in it, and yet it keeps coming back.
yeah. So I think that's probably
Yeah, that's the best
reading I can
explanation.
think
And
of
then
that.
I think like Scott pointed this out last night that there's a moment kind of so after she gets pregnant, there's a moment in the film where it's kind of like everything's calm and everything's fine and he's writing again and everything's okay. And then when everything's not okay again in like the third act of the movie, that's when the hole starts opening up and bleeding again.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
that makes
So you wanted to
sense.
get into the baby?
Yes, let me like build up to that.
Sure, sure.
So it was interesting to watch this. Not just me. I think Tito did this too. We were like viewing it in kind of an improviser's sort of perspective because it's heightening. So because you're taught in
Yeah.
improv, you got to heighten it. So there are a number of resets throughout the movie. So like the family comes and like there's all this family drama. They end up having a funeral there. It just gets out of hand, but then it kind of resets and it's like, okay, how are they gonna heighten it in the next scene? And then it turns into like this giant like riot basically in the house, and then this just does a really good job of like ratcheting it up every scene until the end when it's just completely insane. It also does that with his generosity. So like first it's like, we'll let this stranger sleep in our house. Okay, that's sort of like understandable. Then we're just gonna let them have a funeral. We don't know these people, but their son died, so we're gonna have a funeral in our kitchen. Then like it's just like he just keeps giving more and more, and ultimately the biggest thing that he ends up giving is she has a baby in the middle of all this chaos, with all these people taking over the house. And so like they go into his office, barely make it there because they're being like, it's just like it's hard to state the chaos that's happening in this house at this point. Like it's like a literal war zone outside. And so they're in his office. She gives birth to the baby, and he's like, give me my son, I want to hold my son. And she does not want to give him to him because she doesn't trust him. He won't tell the people to go away.
Right.
She's like, please send them away. He says, I don't want them to leave. So she's holding on to the baby, and it's like kind of a time lapse where it's like a couple days at least until finally she just like nods off, and he takes the baby, and she runs out after him, and like he's carrying the baby into the crowd, and then she catches up to him, and he turns around, and the baby's not in his hands. And then she looks up, and he's being like crowd surfed, this newborn baby through the crowd, and she's like freaking out, give me my baby, I need my baby. And then you just hear a snap.
Like a neck snap.
Oh, God.
And they killed the baby. And then as the crowd parts, she goes and there's like a shrine, and you see that the crowd has been eating
the baby.
The baby.
They ripped him to shreds, and they're eating the baby. Body of Christ.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, no, I get it. I just,
like I said.
Yeah.
And we didn't even talk about the scene where he impregnates her, like where they have sex, and that's even a little like whoa, because you know, they get into this argument, and then she's like, you know, at one point she says, you don't really love me, you just love how much I love you. And then she's like, you know, saying how he never has sex with her, and she basically is like, you never even fuck me. And then he like starts trying to have sex with her, and at first it kind of seems a little rapey, and you're like, okay. And then she just gets into it and likes it, and then they do it, and then the morning after, she's like, I'm pregnant. Like right away, she feels that she's pregnant.
I think you got one part wrong there. She doesn't say you'd never.
That's at the very end.
That's at the end, yeah.
You never loved me, you only loved me.
Right. But I just mean like that's kind of
film.
like the whole film. You're kind of seeing that like
that's
you don't really know that, you don't really think that he loves her. Like the whole movie, you're just like, he just loves like just her loving
Her
him
adulation.
and how her devotion to him, basically. So, but yeah, I definitely. Yeah.
Well, getting back to the baby, though, because there was such a crazy scene.
Oh, my
I
God,
just
so
wanna talk a little bit
nuts.
more about it. Because she, you know, her baby's just been murdered and eaten in front of her eyes, basically. And then he's like, we have to forgive them. We have to, listen to how sad, and they're all mourning, and, like, this huge crowd of people, and they're all, like, so sad that they killed this baby and ate it. And
As you do.
As you do. And so, again, getting back to, like, so much of religion and the things that we're taught, it's like those are fucked up things. Like we're literally taught to be like, this is the body of Christ, take it and eat it, and it's a beautiful thing. And it's like, let's think about that. And when put into very literal terms, that's disgusting,
Disturbing,
and completely horrifying.
Yeah.
And so I think that's
I feel like violence is thematically very ingrained in religion, especially that
and
of Christianity.
Sexual violence
against women. Yeah.
Yes.
Sexual violence
and
a lot.
it definitely deals a lot with that.
Yes. I
this
think that
as
is
well.
another big theme of this film is we talked about like
Patriarchy.
patriarchy, feminism, things of that nature. I think that he uses her character as a foundation of which he can build on top of. And then in the end, I mean, you find out that she is literally the house.
I don't know if she is. Like, there's definitely a connection between, like, she. I think that's one way you could read it.
It's
is
like
that she
part
is
of
the
her,
house.
kind of. Yeah.
They're definitely connected.
Yeah. He so if we're gonna fast forward a little bit into the end of the film, she ends up dying, and he takes from her love,
Which is her heart.
which is her heart in some ways. It's actually in the form of he literally pulls out of her chest a crystal. And the crystal is alive in some way, you can tell, because it has veins in it. And he ends up putting that onto a pedestal, which is in one of the rooms of the house. and the house then resets. And
It is no longer burnt. By the way, before that happened, she burns the house
burns the
down
entire
because she's
house.
just like, I'm done with all this crap. My baby just got
it was
eaten.
burnt down at the beginning.
Yeah, and actually the very first shot of the movie is a woman burning, and then a shot of this crystal being placed on a pedestal.
Oh, so it's a circle of life.
it happens twice.
And then at the
Yes.
end it comes back, and it's always a different woman, which I have some thoughts about.
Yeah. So then maybe the last shot of the film, it is somebody that looks oddly close to Jennifer Lawrence,
But not Jennifer.
but not Jennifer Lawrence. And so you're finding out, the circle is happening again, and so
So God's a serial killer.
Basically.
I also
So-
read she's supposed to be Mother Earth. So
I really want to get into like what she represents, because
Sure.
there's a lot of different theories about that. I just want to really quick read this Bible verse. Ezekiel 36:26 it says, "I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh."
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Because like he digs into her
Super
burnt
literal.
flesh and
And
pulls
it's
out
a
this like
heart
ashy
of
thing, and
stone.
it falls apart, and then there's a little like
I was
crystal
thinking
inside.
like the Sacred Heart kind of, like
Or
that,
that
kind of imagery, but yeah.
There's so many. Like you could spend hours just going through and being like each little thing
Yes.
is a parallel to something in the Bible. But
yeah. So you wanted to divulge into what she means as a character?
yeah, I
Yeah.
have like a few different ideas. I think one is that she is the house, like you said. Like there's times where she touches it and she like can see like almost like an ultrasound of like the heartbeat
Yeah.
of the house, and it's just like
and it's starting to
as
burn.
the house is falling apart, as it's being destroyed, it's like it's taking its toll on her. And at one point, she's literally being beaten and torn apart by this crowd.
Yes.
Um,
As the house is,
and-
and it's being mirrored in the house. The house is also being torn apart.
Yeah.
As she is. Before you go into it real fast, there was a scene which was another thing that was hard for us to kind of figure out what's going on when the old man is throwing up into the toilet, and we think it's the same toilet. We don't know why he's throwing up, and they never. Apparently, it never happened, right? Because the next morning, it's as if it didn't happen.
I think they were just saying, "Nope, I don't know what you're talking about."
Right. And so she's like, am I crazy? I swear something happened. And then just things happen. And so they stop talking about it. But later on, I think it's the same toilet in the film. There is something in the toilet, and it is biological,
It looks almost like a heart.
and it does look like a heart, and it looks a lot like the heart of the house. Whenever we see this ultrasound of the house, when she's putting her head on the house and trying to feel what the house is, it looks a lot like that. And so, it at first thought, I was like, is the house, is that a metaphor for the house is going down the drains literally, or what is this? What was that was in that? In
or
the
was
toilet
it the
bowl?
rib that he got,
Yeah,
I
have
don't
no
know.
idea.
There were like worms, it looked like, or like maggots. So
It
that
did look like
reminded me of like an apple. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't really
was
know.
it the apple from the Adam and Eve story
Yeah,
of Adam
I don't
and
really
Eve?
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think on that one because I have no idea.
No
what
Bible verses to stick.
My-
So you were talking about Jennifer Lawrence's character.
Yeah, so either she's the house, then there's also, if the house is like the earth and creation and
Sure.
everything, then she's the caretaker of it. So you could see like she is Mother Earth.
Sure.
And then that's where you get into some environmental themes of like, all the people coming in are destroying it. Like humanity destroys creation because humanity sucks.
Yep.
And the only solution is to just burn it down, kill everybody, and then start from scratch. And then
Yep.
it'll like...
in some sort of flood or plague, perhaps.
See, and that you may be onto something there, Jim. Because in the Bible, how many times does God destroy either the whole world or just like a city that He doesn't like?
Sure.
Because like, it's just gone down the drain. We'll just burn it and then start from scratch, and everyone. Will.
Yeah.
So just that cycle of destruction and creation is
But she destroyed it, and she is not
well, 'cause
the God equivalent in this story. He is.
right.
Right.
Right?
That's a good point.
Maybe she
Yeah.
didn't feel like she had a choice.
Well, I think she didn't feel like she had a choice.
Okay.
Yeah. She. This is the only answer now is to burn down this house. It is also interesting.
Save it, maybe.
I don't know if it was to save it. I mean, she did it right after her kid was torn apart and she got beat up. Right? It wasn't too far
It's
after
just
that.
it wasn't
scene.
going to end. He wasn't going to send him
Right,
away.
right.
And she had easily nothing.
I mean,
She
if
had
you,
the end.
yeah.
So a question is, why did she do it?
Well, if you think of her as a Mother Earth character, I mean, think about the situation that she's faced with, like she's just going to keep getting beaten down. People are going to keep destroying her house. They've ruined her life. And if you think of that as like humanity ruining the earth, like one thing that you pointed out, Dylan, like when things happen, like when the Big Bang happened, like, you know, the earth still remained, you know, right? Well, no. What are we talking about when the dinosaurs died off?
Oh,
the earth
sure.
still remained.
Yeah.
But they all died.
Meteor.
Yeah, you said like we're worried that the Earth is gonna, like we're gonna.
Yeah,
kill
Neil
the Earth. The Earth's not gonna die.
The Earth's not going to die.
We're gonna die.
We're
and the
going to
Earth will be
die.
fine.
Yes,
Yeah, so I think
that was a
that's-
quote from Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Right. So I sort of feel like her character's saying like, I need all of you to die off because this needs to start
She's
over.
basically the
Need a
meteor
reset.
that
Mhm.
killed the dinosaurs.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But then like the true cruel irony of it is that then it just starts all over again.
Right.
Because then the next scene is at the very end. She burns the house down. He gets the crystal, puts it. The house resets, and then there's a new woman in the bed, and presumably the same exact thing happens again.
Right.
So we
she
haven't
can't
learned
fight City
anything.
Hall. Yeah.
So we have not learned anything. Like,
No, we don't learn.
There's no lesson.
we don't learn, and I really think that's like a huge part of this movie that's so important, is like we're not learning like from the things that are happening. We're saying there, you know, there's still people that are saying all these hurricanes and earthquakes and things that have been happening recently are not related in any way to climate change. Are you crazy? I'm sorry, but that's nuts. Of course, it isn't a direct correlation, but there are things that, you know,
Yeah.
we're making the earth a terrible place to live in.
It's like sitting on the kitchen sink and being like, it's fine, as you bounce
Right.
on it until it
Right.
collapses.
That's
Oh,
exactly
yeah,
it.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not.
I will
It's not
say
fine.
that thematically, I thought there might be some other stories that are being told there. Maybe like the plight of the artist. Somebody that, and him being the artist here.
Can I just real quick? I just had one more theory about who she represents, and then I
Yes.
would love to
Yes.
get into
Yeah.
the other
Yes.
theories, the readings
Yes,
of it.
please.
Sorry, I'm taking over this.
No, I really like it.
I also theorize that she represents the Jewish people
Okay.
because they are God's chosen people. They were the people he chose first, and then he welcomed like all the Gentiles and everybody else in. So there's a little bit of that feeling of like, hey, I'm your wife. I was the first. Like you chose
Oh.
me, and you're like all your attention is divided with all these other people. And then also just the image of a pregnant woman. I talked about this a little bit last night. But in the book of Revelations, there's like this vision of like in the sky, this dragon who is Satan pursuing a pregnant woman who some people interpret to represent like the state of Israel or the Jewish people. And so I think that could also be who she is. If he's God, then she's his chosen
That makes sense.
people. But like,
She could also be the Mother Mary, right?
and the mother, yeah, I think that's also a very obvious one
Yeah.
Yeah.
to paint. So I don't know. I feel like I'm most interested in what she represents because there's a lot of different angles.
Sure.
To it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear what other people have to say about this too. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear, you know, after a long talk last night that this is very religiously charged as far as the stories are concerned. But I do think there's potential to take away other things from it. Again, the plight of the artist. He is a struggling poet. He kind of feeds off other people to come up with ideas, to create, to be a creative. And then it gets to a point where he starts getting fans. And, it just almost looks like a concert at one point where he has fans outside the door that are reaching for him, grabbing for him. They want pictures with him, etc. He wants, or she, let me start back up here a second. There's also, like invasion of space is like a theme that happens a lot in this movie too, where she is more of an introverted character and his is more of an extroverted character, where he kind of feeds off of other people, whereas she just wants to be in this house alone, and
or alone with him too.
or alone with him. Like almost like a codependency situation potentially. But there's very few scenes where I think there's one scene where she's outside of the house in this 2-hour film or however long it was. And she steps outside for a couple seconds, and she's staring off into the distance, and they kind of look like they live in the middle of nowhere. There's trees around, and that's
And
it.
he also doesn't want her to leave. Like, that's very clear towards the end of the film, because she keeps trying to leave because of all this chaos that's
Yes.
happening, and he's like, you can't leave, and he won't let her leave.
Right, right.
So,
Sounds like religion to me.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I think we should wrap this up. So, what did you guys... did you guys enjoy the film? Did you not enjoy the film? Are there any problems that we had with the film? Because I mean, for most of what we did for the last 30 minutes was kind of pick it apart. Like, oh, what are the themes? What's the symbolism here? But are there things that you enjoyed or did not enjoy about it?
Enjoy seems like such a weird word to
Sure.
to apply to this movie.
Sure.
Because there's very little joy to be found in it.
Yeah.
I appreciated it a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'd watch it again. Maybe I'd have to give myself some time to
Yeah.
recover before watching it again.
Knowing you a little bit, I feel like you would.
I feel like you
If
would.
only to pick it apart. If only to
Yeah.
find more themes. And
Yeah, there's so much to like, and that's kind of fun too. It's like there's a bunch of little Easter eggs for
Yes.
Right.
to like discover. One thing that I thought was really interesting, kind of going off of your interpretation of it, is like the creative, persona of the artist, because then it almost feels like it's a little bit autobiographical for Darren Aronofsky to be like making a movie about what it's like to be with, some creative person, which.
And it's funny because you could literally put him in Javier Bardem's place, because him and Jennifer Lawrence are together.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing is at the end of the movie, it's not Jennifer Lawrence who comes back, it's another woman. So it's like every creative endeavor, there's some new
And he's always
young
dating.
muse.
Yeah.
He's
And that's
always
what he does.
he's always dating his actresses. He
That's
dated
what
Natalie
you were saying
Portman in Black
yesterday.
Swan too.
So it's a very self-aware movie. It's very clever.
This isn't his weirdest film, though, right?
I
Or
don't know.
I don't know. I
might-
haven't
The
seen
Fountain
enough.
Weirder.
The Fountain's super weird,
Yeah.
but it might be The Fountain. The Fountain's really weird.
but the Fountain isn't as abrasive. I mean, this was very abrasive.
Yeah, I think this is his most in your face. And maybe if I had one, I don't know if criticism exactly, but it's not subtle at all.
Yes.
Yeah,
you mentioned this.
is that a good or a bad thing? I don't know. I feel like some people might see it as like a little like a little heavy-handed, very in your face.
Is this potentially why it's getting an F rating on
very likely?
Yeah.
what is it?
Cinema score.
She
Cinema
gets
score, yeah.
Which is what
beaten.
audiences-
She gets beaten.
She
He
gets-
starts to like get rapey with her, and then she ends up liking it. Then they eat the baby. I mean, come on. There are some things
legit
that like
fucked
people
up
are just like,
images in this movie.
no, yeah.
So yeah, I completely understand why like general audiences are not taking kindly to this movie.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it is not easy to digest at all. I mean, again, this is maybe the most anxious I've ever felt in a theater.
Yeah.
I think, like, just as a person who hasn't seen it but has seen all the marketing around it, it's not marketed like that. It's marketed as a thriller.
That is maybe my biggest complaint about this film
Okay.
is the marketing, I think, was off. I think the trailer was poorly put together because I think it was an enthralling trailer because it did make me want to go see it. But I think not only that being the purpose of a trailer, it should also give you an idea of what the movie is going to be about.
Or at
and
least
it
what the
looked like
experience
a
will be about, yeah.
psychosexual thriller, and that is not what it was. Some of those words might still be applied, but not a sexual thriller.
Right.
Definitely
Yeah.
psycho. Definitely sexual. Not a psychosexual thriller.
And we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but it's like, how do you sell the movie as
Sure,
it is? Like,
sure.
you kind of have to be like,
Maybe that's where the
"Hey,
marketing department was
attractive
like,
people. There's a mystery, like
Yeah.
trying to make it sound like you got to get people in the seats. Like a studio
Right.
paid however much money to have
Right.
this movie
And I think
made.
they probably accomplished that, but I would say I don't know if I could watch it again. My reaction was so visceral that I feel the same way. I appreciate what they did with the film. I think it was cinematography was gorgeous. It was a beautiful movie in terms of the way it looked. The acting was excellent. I, however, just felt like, yeah, it's like you said, it's some very, very anxiety producing, and I don't know if I could sit through that level of anxiety again.
I produce enough anxiety
On my own. Yeah. I don't need more
I don't need that in
added to what I
movies.
already produce. Yeah. Good
Yep.
point.
Overall, I would give it an A.
Okay.
It's an A movie in my book.
Yeah, I guess one other thought I think before we wrap up. I think this is an interesting art piece, and I'm actually very surprised that it made it to theaters.
And a wide release.
In a
Yeah.
wide
It's
release.
so-
Yeah, indie film, sure.
It's such an
Yeah.
abrasive, uncomfortable.
Well, it's Jennifer
weird film.
Lawrence and it's Darren
That's
Aronofsky.
the key.
And it's
your
Javier
answer.
Bardem. They're all
Yeah.
very like famous people, so
That's
I
your
feel like
answer.
yeah.
And Kristen Wiig. Kristen Wiig is in this movie, and she is incredible.
Oh my
She's
gosh.
in it
She
for a
starts
couple
out as like
seconds.
his publicist, and she like
Oh.
shows up and she's like, "Hey, we're here," and like taking pictures and trying to
Mm-hmm.
like promote his new poem that he just finished writing. And then when you cut to like all the chaos and war zone happening later, she's literally like
Shooting people in the
execution
head.
style. And she's like, "Oh, the muse is back, kill her!" And then she dies in an explosion. It's such a weird, brief role, but
I do
like,
love Kristen Wiig.
It's getting a 69% on Rotten Tomatoes. Personally, I'd give it probably a high B score. I feel like that's just a safe score for some reason, but like, yeah, God, did this movie make me think?
Yeah,
You know?
it was a movie with a very clear vision
Mm-hmm,
and executed to, I don't know if I say perfection, but
Yeah.
like it was
Well
a very well
executed.
executed
Yeah.
idea, and it's messed up, and it's not easy to watch, and it's not enjoyable in the traditional sense, but
Sure.
it's measured against what it is and what it's trying to be. It's a success.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Are we ready to wrap up?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So thank you for tuning into the Mother review, Darren Aronofsky's latest film. And make sure to tune into Screen Source Sundays at 3 p.m. MST right here on twitch.tv/Color Circuit Live, where we talk about film, television, news reviews, and trailers. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.